but people have been working very hard to be sure we're ready as we kick off the new school year. We'll be starting again, as several of the board members have requested, with reports on projects and plans for next year. And we will start those presentations the next board meeting on July 25th. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from each major department what they have been doing over the summer and some of their plans for next year. And then next week, many of our administrators in the district will be attending a leadership conference that will be held in Albuquerque. I've had some requests about what is going on with Rio Rancho Middle School, and you'll get a more detailed report from facilities and from Melanie Archibald. But here's just a really quick synopsis of what's been going on. On the 400 wing, which is the upper floor of Rio Rancho Middle School, the concrete polish schedule will be completed in the next 2 weeks. On the lower level, which is the 300 wing, the demolition is complete. Classroom flooring has been started. The restroom tile, partitions, and flooring is also now underway, and all of the ceiling work is underway. So there's a tremendous amount of work being done on that lower level. And as we go through the year, students will be moved from place to place in order to accommodate the completion of this project. It's one of the largest projects that we've had, and as we put in new HVAC and done some other updating in our buildings. So they've been working very hard during the summer, but the renovation process will go through the entire school year. Concrete polishing on the upper floor of the connecting building between the two wings is scheduled to be done before school is started. And the gunshot detection system for the entire school is also underway. All the cabling is complete. The devices are going to be installed this week, and the plan is to have it operational prior to the start of school. So these plans are underway. We will be sending a communication to all the families at Rio Rancho Middle School prior to the start of school so they can anticipate what the school year is going to look like. They have a good plan in place. It will go, we think, fairly smoothly, but it'll be a challenging year for Rio Rancho Middle as we complete that project. Okay. We've had summer school underway. We had 647 students attend summer school sessions. There were 2 sessions, and the second session will end this Friday. So we're about done with that. And sessions have been held at the Student Support Center. And this is, we've had 176 ninth graders participate, 257 10th graders, 205 11th graders, and 37 12th graders that have been part of the summer session. Or just the first half, the first 3 weeks, we had 942.5 credits earned during that first session. And again, we'll have some numbers after the second session ends this Friday. One of the things that's important to know is that there will no longer be grant funds available next year. So unfortunately, we will begin charging again. And we wish there were funds for that, but those were federal funds that are no longer available to the district. On staffing, we will give you more information at the beginning of the year at the first board meeting in August. But we have really seen incredible, considerable progress in our ability to hire for our classrooms. And progress is also being made in the hiring of bus drivers. We currently have 11 bus drivers in training at this time. That is really, really good news as well. We are pleased with the overall quality of the applicants in all of our areas this year. And so we're seeing some really good people want to come and work for our district. And that is just really gratifying. And we had a large number of positions to fill this summer. So that resulted in a lot of district office administrators and principals working many, many additional hours. They certainly gave the time that was needed to get these vacancies filled. I want to just recognize that and thank them for all of the extra time that they have put into this effort. As I mentioned, Mike Chavez will give you a more in-depth report once we have hired all of our remaining slots, hopefully before the start of school, and we'll be able to give you very specific information about the number of hires. But things are looking really good on the staffing end, and again, we are thankful for the improvement in compensation that has helped us be able to recruit additional staff to our district. The school year calendar, it's hard to believe that we're almost back to school. This year, we have an expanded induction program for all teachers new to the district. This includes first-year teachers and experienced teachers, and they will start attending sessions beginning July 27th. They will be, the folks that have worked on this a lot are Todd Resch, Joy Morales, and Mike Chavez. They will be coming to provide a report to the board on the program, the number of folks that are involved. And I think you'll be very pleased to see what a really good tool this will be, not only after we hire people, but more importantly, we keep them. And that we provide the support so that they will feel that they have the knowledge and skills to be successful in our district. Our returning teachers will report on August the 1st. That's about 2 weeks. We do have, as we've had in the past, that we didn't have during the pandemic, Jump Start, and that will begin on August the 4th. And this is a wonderful opportunity for our incoming 6th and 9th grade students to get in the buildings and familiarize themselves with their new campuses and find their classrooms and meet people before the official start of school. All of the other students report. So parents who have 6th and 9th graders, I really encourage you to take advantage of that Jump Start opportunity. All middle and high school students begin on August the 5th, and our secondary students will report on that Friday to provide weekend time for any needed adjustments. And what often happens is always the case. You'll have schedule changes. You'll have things that come up. People have had to change classes, or maybe they had a class they signed up for, but they took it this summer. And so there'll be some schedule changes. And this gives those secondary buildings a head start on being able to make those changes as quickly as possible. And elementary students will report on August the 8th. We have a UNM partnership, and we'll be giving you more information on that, but we wanted you to be aware of that. Michael Madrid has taken a leadership role in helping us be part of this UNM Purchasing Department's Small Business and Strategic Partner Vendor Fair. And the purpose of this, and I know you hear this from businesses in the community, they want to know how to do business with this school district. How do you do business with the Rio Rancho Public School District? And this allows them to learn about the procurement process for any government entity. It showcases their businesses and networks with potential customers and helps them reconnect with existing customers. So this is a wonderful opportunity, and really thank Michael for his effort in making this a reality for our district. We're going to have a commendation this evening. Sal Gonzalez has been selected to be the new athletic coordinator at Rio Rancho High School. As you know, Mr. Gonzalez has had many successful years as a head track and cross-country coach at Rio Rancho High School. Bruce Carver, our executive director of athletics, will share some of his successes and why he was selected to provide leadership for RAM Athletics in this coming year. And I want to just, on a personal note, thank him for his many years of service as a head coach, and congratulate him on this new assignment and taking on this pretty awesome responsibility. And we're just so pleased that he had an interest in taking this on. We're going to have some policy updates for the board to look at. The first proposed policy change will be presented by Mike Baker, Chief Operations Officer, and Lynn Carl, Executive Director for Student Transportation. This will be the second reading of this policy, so the board can take action if it chooses to do so on the proposed changes this evening. There's just a couple of comments I think maybe merit restating. These changes do not impact students with disabilities who ride buses in any way. So that does not change for students, for our special education students. The restrictions related to hazardous paths to school, such as crossing a major highway or any other hazard, that does not change either. So regardless of the actual miles, you cannot cross a busy street, or there are other hazards that are listed. That did not change either. And we had people who were very concerned about having to cross 528 or northern or southern. The actions being proposed are really intended to improve what has been a very difficult situation for everyone, acknowledging it's been very difficult for families. It's been very difficult for schools when students arrive very, very late, miss some of their instruction, or get home very, very late. And so it's been a major challenge. And much of that has been driven by a lack of drivers and very limited equipment in some cases. And so they looked at this situation and said, how can we make it better? It is hoped that the policy modifications will improve our transportation system. However, I want to be really clear. It simply does not guarantee that all the problems that we had are going to go away, because there's still some major challenges. So I mentioned that one of the really exciting things is that we are beginning to hire drivers, and that has been the largest single challenge that we have had, as a lack of personnel to run the routes. Policy 622 will be presented by Carl Leppelman, Chief Academic Officer, and Sherry Carver, Executive Director of Student Services. This is the second reading, which means the board can, of course, take action if you choose to do so on this policy. It includes clarifications on student charges for field trips and specifies items for which our fees can be assessed. I would like to say we have very, very few fees left in the school district. Most of them have been eliminated over the years, and try very hard not to have a large number of fees, and have been, we think, pretty successful in eliminating most of those. And this policy has also been reviewed by the district's legal counsel. And then we have three other policy updates, 710, 720, and 728. And all of these policy changes will be presented by Mike Chavez, our Executive Director for Human Resources, and all of these have also been reviewed by our legal counsel. These three will be the first reading, so no action can be taken by the board. Certainly this is an evening to discuss it and provide us any further direction on the policies, or ask for any information that you might have on the policies. And a second reading will be brought to the board at the July 25th regular meeting. These policies really need to be in place before the start of the school year. So we're hoping that we can get those done at the next board meeting. And some of these changes do reflect state regulatory requirement changes or court decisions. And so those are listed for you there. And I stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? Nope.
Okay.
Questions over here? Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Okay, we'll move to our next item, which is to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations. Any changes that need to take place there?
This is Secretary Scott. I move to approve the prioritized agenda and time allocations.
Board Member Gary Tripp, I second it.
Okay. We have a motion by Noreen Scott and a second by Gary Tripp. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving into our public comment. And I have to say, I actually thought I was going to come in tonight and see a very, very full boardroom. I was surprised not to have a full boardroom public comment tonight. And that's because for our public comment, we did receive 90 public comment through our form that goes out. And so to go through those, we're going to summarize them a little differently than we normally do since there's so many. And I want to thank Kim Besley actually for going through and doing those last night. As I was going through and reading all of them, I was a little overwhelmed on trying to figure out how to summarize those. So I want to just give her a shout out and say thank you for doing that.
I would like to comment that I'd like to thank everyone who cared enough to send us comments, because that really helps us and informs our ability. So I would like to thank our communications department and Beth for getting the word out so that people could get back to us with comments.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Okay, so to go through, we did have one that came in that was not related to transportation. That one was from Janet Fackrell, and she was talking about the latest school shooting was prompting her to investigate school safety, and so she looked at our district and where we are. She just wanted to support a local policy to implement the health assessment and performance evaluation system, which is known as the SHAPE program that the state puts out for us. So all of our other, so 89 comments that we were given were on transportation. And these comments, so I'm going to go through these. You're going to notice that the numbers won't add up. But what Kim did was try to put numbers to the different concerns that were brought up through it. So we had 29 that were concerned with hazardous walking conditions. We had 13 that had concerns about the walk zone distance to school and the time that it would take for kids to walk. We had 19 with concerns about predators, students walking in bad weather and the darkness. We had 18 who were concerned with the changes to the school start and end times. There were 20 that were also concerned about the start and end times, and that conflicting with students' family schedules, and concerns about their jobs that they have and how that's going to work. We had 2 that were concerned about there not being any more transportation to and from daycares. 3 that were concerned about the consolidation of bus stops. 2 that were concerned with bus stop safety issues. We had 6 people who were concerned about the first email that went out, that the link was broken for them to see if their student was in the walk zone. 4 people talked about their taxes paying for transportation and that we should be providing that service. We had a lot, some things that had some lack of data. We also had, let's see, we had 6 that were kind of other. There was one that was blank in there. There was a couple of other kind of funny things that came through. And we received one person who was understanding and complimented the changes that were taking place and that the district was proposing these changes. I'm looking at Mike as he's scowling at me. Out of 90, we got 1. So it was a rough read yesterday as I was going through them and today. But those are our public comment. As you can see with the way that those have been summarized, that we truly do read through all those public comment, even when we receive 90. And we appreciate those public comment coming to our school board. And if there are others who would like to give public comment, you can go to our RRPS board page and give public comment there. Anytime you'd like, you're also welcome to come into the boardroom and give public comment here. And we love to have people here in our boardroom. So that is it for our public comment for tonight. We will be able to, since we do have that as an agenda item, as we'll talk about transportation, we'll be able to address some of those concerns. And Dr. Cleveland already did some of that in her opening remarks. Okay. Now, moving on to commendations. So for our commendation for tonight, as Dr. Cleveland talked about, it's going to be a recognition of Sal Gonzalez for 14 years of success as head track and cross-country coach for Rancho High School. So Bruce Carver will invite him to come up, and if he'd like Sal to come up with him now, he can do that too. He's our executive director of athletics.
Good evening, President Galbraith, board members, and Dr. Cleveland. It's a real honor to be up here again to recognize a very special coach. I can remember 14 years ago when we interviewed Sal Gonzalez for the track and cross-country coach at Rio Rancho High School. He came across very enthusiastic, a lot of passion for his sport, and also had great communication skills. So we were impressed and we hired Sal. But we also knew that it was going to be a big jump from Pecos to Rio Rancho. And Sal had some success at Pecos, won a state championship over there, and we were hoping it would carry over. 14 years later, I can tell you that he not only met expectations, he exceeded expectations in every way. 4 state championships at Rio Rancho High School, 11 state runner-ups at Rio Rancho High School. Most important, though, Sal's been a great motivator. He's a mentor, a teacher. He's the department chair for the social studies department. He's taken on a little bit of everything over there, but he's a great role model for hundreds of students and student athletes over the years. And I know he's made a huge difference in so many of them, their lives. Now, this is not a goodbye to Sal, so we'll be seeing him plenty, as he is going to be the new athletic director for Rio Rancho High School. And I have no doubt, I have all the confidence in the world in Sal that he will not only meet expectations, but he will again exceed expectations before it's all said and done. But before he begins this new journey, I did want to recognize his 14 years of commitment to Rio Rancho High School and the success and just all his accomplishments. So I got him a plaque which says, "With sincere appreciation, Sal Gonzalez, for your 14 years of outstanding service as head cross country and track coach for Rio Rancho High School. 4 state championships, 11 state runners up. Sal Gonzalez."
I'd like to thank Bruce Carver, and I'd especially like to thank all of the athletes and parents that I've been really lucky to be around at Rio Rancho High School. There's no doubt that none of these state championships or state runner-ups would have been possible without the great community that we have at Rio Rancho High School. I'm, just been really lucky. This is a big change for me. I, plan to grow old as a coach. And, so this was kind of a thing for me to jump to become athletic director. And, but I'm really excited. And so, like I said, I'm real grateful to our community, real grateful that Bruce Garver gave a small town guy a shot 14 years ago. And it's been a great ride. And I'm, I'll be back, hopefully, in front of you all. Hopefully it'll be a good news, but probably not. Thank you very much.
Before you sit down, give us a second to we're going to run through. I'm sorry. I think it feels weird to everyone, but we appreciate it. So, Dr. Cleveland, do you want to say anything before I go to the
I
board?
think I said before, but again, we are so thankful for the work you've done at Rio Rancho High, and very pleased that you've been willing to take on this new responsibility. I know you'll do a great job, and again, congratulations.
Thank you. Gary Tripp?
Sal, thank you for everything you've done in the last 14 years, but more importantly, thank you for what you've done your whole career. The Norteño boy that's done very, very well. Highlands graduate, you took care of a lot of kids over time, and we look forward to you taking care of those coaches now. And great job. Great job.
Just want to say thank you and good luck to your new role.
Yeah, thank you. Francesca?
I'll just say my short time I spent at Rio Rancho, they always complimented you on the efficiency in which you could run a track meet. And I know that's appreciated by everybody. So I'm sure you'll make sure that your predecessor maintains that same level of efficiency in track meets. But congratulations on your accomplishments and good luck in your new role.
Congratulations, and thank you for all your energy that you've put in our kids. Appreciate it.
And thank you. And to Jessica Tyler's comments, seriously, I think we're all really concerned that our track meets are going to not be as good. But I just wanted to say thank you. You have coached 2 of my nephews, Andrew Erickson and Chase Hawkins, and then 2 of my children. And it's true about being a motivator to our students. You have been amazing to them. You helped kids through a pandemic when I think that was all that they had to hold on to was running with you. And you have been spectacular, and you've been amazing as a teacher, as you've taught my children too. I heard your voice ring through my home during the pandemic, and and we are truly, truly grateful to have you in this district. So thank you so much for being here tonight. And I'm so glad that you're not leaving, though I did shed tears a little bit that you weren't going to be coaching my kids anymore. So thank you so much. All right. all teary now. Okay. So our next is to approve the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda tonight?
Madam President, Gary Tripp, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Board Member Tyler, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Gary Tripp and a second by Jessica Tyler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving into our business portion, we have a report. The Rio Rancho Public Schools Board of Education met in closed executive session at 4 o'clock on Monday, July 11th to update the board on pending litigation as permitted under Section 10-15-1H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. The matters discussed in the closed meeting were limited only to those specified in the notice of a separate closed meeting. All right, our next item is a second reading on changes to policy 906 on transportation. We have Michael Baker, our Chief Operations Officer, and Lynn Carl, our Executive Director of Transportation, here to present the policy.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board. So this evening, we do want to review our second reading, and we are requesting that the board approve that. Probably the biggest change, and as Dr. Cleveland said earlier, this does not affect special needs students. But the biggest change on the policy would be to increase the walk zone from the elementary from 1 mile to 1.2 mile, middle school 1.5 to 2 miles, high school 2 miles to 2.5. We believe that those are the significant changes to the policy. Again, does not affect special needs kids. Now, we are aware that that not just the walking distance, but also a number of the changes that we are requesting is due to what occurred this past school year. And we know nobody wants a repeat of last school year. And so we are, we say post-COVID, but we're really not post-COVID. We still have flare-ups from time to time. And because of that environment, our environment has changed fairly drastically. And so we have a work shortage, a labor shortage, and we've had great difficulty actually hiring bus drivers, among other positions, but specifically bus drivers. And so this last school year, we had great difficulty getting students to school on time. And although year after year, we would increase the salary for bus drivers, it seemed to have no effect on us actually hiring. There were a number of reasons why. We know that the federal government had increased their amounts that they were giving for workers, not just workers' compensation, but also for unemployment. And then the state followed suit. The state additional unemployment insurance just changed a few months ago. And we believe those are some of the reasons why we were having so much difficulty actually hiring. The district did go kind of on a hiring spree to try to attract folks to the district. We did a lot of advertisement, and we believe, as Dr. Cleveland said earlier, that is beginning to pay off. And it appears that we are starting to attract more folks to apply as bus driver. Now, we're still several weeks away before the beginning of school. We have a ways to go as far as getting the applicants cleared and actually trained and to get on our routes. But things are improving, which is a very, very good sign. But the reason why we're here, I just want to make it very clear, is that we don't want to have a repeat of last year. We want to make sure that we are successful in transporting all the students that we need to transport. We transport approximately 8,400 students, and we know we had a number of folks that commented on the change in policy today. But these are the reasons why, or the main reason why we're requesting the change is because of the shortage of bus drivers. So I would like to turn it over to Lynn, maybe for some more detailed information on the change.
Thank you. Good evening, President Galbraith, board members, Dr. Cleveland. As Mike had said, as you all suffered through a rough year like everybody else did last year. And in the year that we had last year, we have been working on this for months and months, trying to figure out what can we do to make transportation better in the future, because we just can't, service the kids the way we did last year. And so we came up with several scenarios, obviously, of combining bus stops, changing bell times to give us some more wiggle room in between. And one of the things that we also came up with is adjusting walk zones. And so we had several things that we have worked on to give the drivers more room in between their routes so that we can get the kiddos to school on time. That's our big focus. We have had quite a few drivers or people apply to be bus drivers. We had 3 bus drivers that used to work for us that came back to work for us. We've had 3 or 4 that have come from out of town that have CDLs and are ready to be on the road as soon as they finish all their processing, and we do a little bit of training on them. So we've had quite a few people come in that are already trained as bus drivers. As of right now, for the start of school, we would have 6 routes that we have to cover for the start of school, and that is better than we've been in a long time. However, at the same time, we don't know everybody that's not going to show up on the first day, but this is where we are right at this red hot second. As you know, we have a population of drivers that are in the older age group like I am. And so we have, older people that are there that some people, we expect them to retire, things like that. And so we're just trying to keep hiring drivers so that we can cover anybody else that may be leaving for whatever reason. Like he said, we have 8,400 students. The change in this walk zones will affect about 700 some students. And so that is what we're looking at is making those changes to get your approval so that we can hopefully provide better transportation next year. Do you have questions?
I'm sure there's lots of questions. Go ahead.
So after our last board meeting, we were provided with some data about the number of students per school that would be affected by these changes. And from looking at that data, it's approximately, or it's almost exactly 50% of the schools that are affected. So a lot of the schools actually don't have any students that would be affected.
Right.
So I'm trying to then translate that to how does that actually assist your drivers on their routes when it's only 50% of the schools that would make changes? How does that translate into making the routes more timely?
Well, so what happens is that there's a few things that happen. It would reduce the number of buses we have to have on the road by about 3. So that means 3 less drivers we have to have. It also means that now instead of having 10 stops on my route, I have 7 stops on my route, which obviously is time and distance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I am very concerned about this proposal for a variety of reasons. We don't have sidewalks in this community. We have very few bike paths to our schools. We don't have public transportation. And so our parents really don't have alternatives. And that concerns me. Couple that with inclement weather and early morning walking in the dark, I think we are opening ourselves up for an incredibly dangerous proposition. And I strongly oppose this. I really think there's got to be some other way to do this that would accomplish what you're trying to do. Maybe we try to do hub and spoke. Anything we could do to lessen having children walking and high school students who could become prey to a variety of things. So that's my opinion.
I understand. Yeah. Thank you.
I know Jessica Tyler has another one.
Sorry, I had one more question. I know you gave us a rundown of the number of drivers that you have and that will be 6 short. How many were we running short on a normal basis last year,
When we
approximately?
started out, we were 17 routes open.
Okay, good. All right, Gary Tripp.
I was curious, how many routes do we?
64, but you know, if we do this and then it's less than 64, but I'm going to say 64 with all of them. Okay.
So there's 11 bus drivers that are in training currently that will be added to the overall manpower of drivers.
Yes, and so hiring somebody, whether it's for transportation or somewhere else, is a process. You know, they have to get their fingerprints, and once they pass that, for us, they have to have a pre-employment drug test and they have to take a physical. So then we have to wait for that to come in, and then they have their other tasks to do, which I think I talked about last board meeting. Then after that, they come to training. The amount of time it takes to train someone to be a bus driver, get their permit, and then pass their final test is about a month. So it takes quite a long time for them to actually get on the road. Some people don't make it through all of that process. We've already had some that we've brought in for interviews and we're putting them through the process, and they've called and said that they found something else. And that happens everywhere. So we have them in process, but there's several steps to get to be an actual bus driver. And so we always know that there's usually a percentage that don't come all the way through. Yeah.
Yeah. If I may add to that, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So if these applicants that are hired now will just bring us to our total allocation, that's not over the allocation.
Mhm.
So what that means is that all those routes would be full. So by not hiring, we would not have enough drivers to fill those 64 routes. So by hiring the 11, that just puts us where we need to be. And so what we try to do is we actually try to hire over that amount, knowing that during the summer months that there are going to be people that are going to resign and that there are people that have health issues and that can no longer drive. So that just puts us where we need to be. Just want to make that clear.
Could I just ask to clarify, was it five drivers only that was authorized to be hired?
I think we want 6.
I think you told me 6.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I'm sorry, I was going to add to Mr. Tripp is that we have 64 routes, but we need 8 standbys, as you always have standbys to cover in case somebody's out. Right at this red hot minute, we have 1 standby. So we need the 64 drivers plus the standbys. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
My question is, what we're talking about right now, we're talking about that 6 over, is that a comfortable number for a 3-tier transportation system in our community or in our district? Or is the numbers that were presented now, is that, because what I heard last time is there's going to be some routes that are 4-tier?
Mhm.
Most of them will be 4 tiers. Mhm.
So are we making a big move from 3-tier to 4-tier? We're increasing, but we're not nowhere near where we need to increase in order to have a 3-tier system. If that makes sense.
So if we were to go back to a 3-tier system, would we have enough drivers?
No, so to do a 3-tier system, we need probably 20 buses to cover that.
Okay.
The problem is every single bus has a late elementary plus the early elementaries. Does that make sense? And so they're already doing an elementary, so they can't do another elementary at the same time. So we would need at least 20 buses to have all the elementaries on a 1 bell schedule. Does that make sense? 20, because at least 20. No, nope. 20 new buses. Mhm.
So are we, I don't know how else to ask this, but are we setting our own self up for failure with a 4-tier system? Because 3-tier system seems like almost impossible, and now we're going to a 4-tier system. And I know we don't have enough drivers. I know, I see the rationale for all this. I'm just wondering, are we going to be back in the same position of nightmares of kids not starting school on time, especially elementary kids not starting their reading program on time, stuff like that?
So actually making more buses 4 tiers will give us more room to do that. So 4 tiers is a high school, an early elementary, a middle school, and a late elementary. So that's what we're talking about for 4 tiers. They have 4 different bell times. And so as an example, Ernest Stapleton went to the early bell time. They had 8 buses. Now those 8 buses can be used for part of those late elementaries and make those routes shorter so they have more time to get those kiddos on time. Does that make sense? Okay. And so it benefits us really to have 4 tiers. We also added a couple more buses to the early schools like Puesta and Colinas so that we can shorten up those routes a little bit. I think last time I talked about Puesta, how they go way out northern and southern to pick up kiddos. And not that they pick up that many kiddos, but it's a really long distance and a long, slow ride. There's dirt roads. And so if we can make that time shorter, we're better at getting them to school on time because we added a couple buses there because now more buses are going on 4 tiers. Sure. It's complicated. It is very complicated. Well, thank you.
My question is, the last time we met, you were going to have some numbers for me for elementary, middle, and high school, the number of students. I know the total number is 700, but you were going to break that down for me by.
I had sent out an email. I had shared a Google sheet that has it broken down by school. Did you not get that?
I did not. I looked yesterday and I looked on Saturday. I didn't see.
I think it came, no, I got it. So I think it came last week, I believe. It came right
I think it came, I want to tell you a couple days after the last board meeting.
Okay. All right. Do you have
So
that
it's-
information?
I don't
not,
have
I'll
it
go
printed
back.
out in
I
front
think
of me.
Jessica Tyler might have it open.
It's 320 elementary students from 5 of the 10 elementary schools. It's, I could just get my form to move. It's 144 middle school students out of 2 out of the 4 middle schools. And then 273 high school students just from Rio Rancho. Cleveland's not affected by the changes. So the elementary schools that are affected, 40 at EHES, 54 at Joe Harris, 19 at Puesta del Sol, 70 at Sierra Vista, I think. Is that right? SVES?
Sandia.
Sandia Vista, sorry. And then 137 from Vista Grande. So a big chunk of, so they're not very evenly dispersed amongst
Vista
the
Grande's
schools.
in Enchanted Hills. So
Yes.
And the unfortunate piece is a lot of those are elementary. That's what I really want to find out. If the elementary students was the biggest number, which is my concern. That's what I want to know.
That is correct. Even though there's like a large number for high school, as we all know, there's a lot of high schoolers that drive to school or get a ride or, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Other questions, Jeff? You good
I'm
for
gonna
now,
try to
for a
find
moment? Dr. Cleveland, I think you have something.
Well,
Well, I think I don't have questions. I do want to run through some things that I've learned as a board member just to put out there. But so if you want to go ahead and talk for a second.
Well, let me just say a couple of things. Again, I think most of the board is aware of that, but I want to kind of respond to a couple of the comments. We have how many buses now, Lynn?
64 routes.
64 routes. Now, how many actual buses do we have?
We have about 12 spares.
We have about 12 spares. Okay. We had, just so the board knows, there was a time we had 99 buses in the school district. And so we have seen those cut over time. We are, to my knowledge, except for Albuquerque, we're the only ones that do 4 tiers. Most of the districts in this state are on 2 tiers. And so they have a much easier time getting kids to and from school than we do. I think this generated originally for Albuquerque Public Schools. And because we were in the same area and when we split off, they kind of kept what they did for Albuquerque for us. But Las Cruces runs on a 2-tier system and they're a larger district. And Santa Fe runs on a 2-tier system and they're a slightly smaller district.
So that means they get more buses. Is that what that means when they get?
Yeah, and they have more buses and part of the issue, and we've talked about this before, we're continuing to work on, they have far more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Mike, you said we're about 2 million short this year in transportation?
This year, the number I believe is a little bit more than 1.6 million.
1.6.
At this year, next year, we will likely be about 2 million deficit.
So we talk about, and say, well, that's, everybody's short. No, everybody isn't short.
Mhm.
And so many of the districts in this state get all their transportation paid, all of it, every year. In fact, many years they have extra money they don't know what to do with. So they go out and buy extra tires, extra things that they need, so they don't have to send that money back to the state. And I've actually sat with superintendents that have been talking about, well, how am I going to use this money? I said, well, okay. Well, we like
Give it
to
to
have
us.
that problem in the Rio Rancho School District. But we have been to court. It's part of the Yazzie decision. We're still going to continue to fight to get that money. But that's another factor. It's just the shortage of funds to be able to do some of the things that we need to do. We need to, for example, one of the things we need to do are buy new activity buses. Our activity buses are very old now. We've had them for many, many years. We don't have money, obviously, to do that. We have we just struggle with some of the things that we need to do. We're not short on maintaining our buses. We have really dedicated people who make sure we don't cut corners on the maintenance at all. But it is a problem financially for the school district. It continues to be a problem. And so we took a look not too long ago comparing ours to Santa Fe, and they get far more money than we do. Far more money than we do. So that's an issue that needs to be resolved at the state level. And it's just a terribly unfair situation. Misery does love company, and Las Cruces has some of the very same issues we have. So we're not alone. The other pattern in the state is more and more districts are now going into debt for transportation. Used to just be 9, and I'm sure that number is double now from what I'm hearing from colleagues. So it continues to be a real challenge. But when you talk about the running, if you can imagine, we just ran 2 tiers every day. Our high school kids would go to school at 8:15, and our elementary children would be home before 4. So it's just something that the board needs to continue to work to find a solution, a legislative solution and solution with the public ed department. We think we know the cause of it. Mike and David, excuse me, have been looking at and Lauren, and they believe it's just one factor alone, and that's density. And no one can explain to any of us why density matters at all in the first place. But I suspect it was a factor that was put in, again, not for Rio Rancho, but probably for Albuquerque years ago. So that's just a little bit of, when people say, yeah, we pay our taxes, you do, but you need to also be aware that we get underpaid for our transportation significantly compared to many other districts. And that just makes the situation more difficult to resolve.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would like to comment that I very much appreciate all the energy you put into this. And I know that last year was tough. And my comments about my concerns are no reflection on your hard work. I do appreciate
Totally
that.
understand.
And I hear what Dr. Cleveland is saying about our money. And I know that that's true. The thing that a lot of people forget is we're not urban, we're urban. We're a large part rural, and I think that's an important thing for people to emphasize to our legislators, that we are driving miles on dirt roads.
Can I go one more time?
Go for it.
Sure.
It's Mike, and I keep forgetting your name. I'm sorry. Lynn, as we spoke the last time. And can you do me a favor? Who's ever controlling this screen here?
Claudia.
I know the last time we talked, my question was, as we get more drivers, we'll improve. But my ask was, I want to make sure we communicate that to the parents, though. And I'm still not seeing that communication out there. Like, I don't want to say this is temporary, because, man, it could go another year or 2. But I just want to give the parents the confidence that as things get better, we could begin to go back to the way things were. And I just want to make sure we communicate that, is all I'm saying. It's important that we do that as things get better, parents will go back to the way things were, And I'm still not seeing that. I've looked at quite a bit of information and I'm still not seeing that in there. And that's a concern of mine. Okay.
And you're talking regards to the walk zone?
Yeah. Yeah. If it gets better, hey, parents, you know what? You don't have to do that anymore. We could pick the kids up now. And I think it's important that we communicate that. Okay. That's all I'm asking.
That's my
Thanks.
objection to this policy. Once it's in policy, how do we back it down? And that's my concern.
Yeah, that is a good concern. You know, I just wanted to really quick, and so it's kind of funny because I'm going to say these things to people who already know all these things, and it really is just echoing what Dr. Cleveland said, but in hopes that maybe someone's listening on YouTube. I really was hoping that we'd have people here tonight. But, you know, when I first came in as a board member, there were so many things that I did not know. And I think this is one of those big ones. And as we saw in our public comment, people kept saying, I can't remember, there actually wasn't a ton, but there were a few who said, well, I pay taxes, and so you should pick up my kid. Maybe not the best way to say that, but, and I think we need to express to our community. So in some ways, when I saw 90, even though I had to read 90 public comment, and they were not all very nice, when I read those comments, I thought, okay, good. This is actually good because people are finally paying attention. Because how long? I've been on the board now for 2.5 years, and we've been dealing with this transportation issue. And so one thing that I really think that our community needs to know, and I'm hoping that even if just one person's listening and can pass it along, is that we have a funding formula, which is what Dr. Cleveland's talking about. And you guys can totally correct me after all of this when I get it wrong. But in that funding formula, it hurts us. And so we end up being short on our money. And so things like transportation and our books for our kids that they need to learn should not be in that funding formula. And it hurts us every time. Every kid who needs to ride a bus, they need to ride a bus regardless of being in Rio Rancho or being in Las Vegas, New Mexico, or wherever they may be. And so that is something that we cannot control. Our tax dollars that we pay go to Santa Fe, and Santa Fe redistributes that to our school districts. And so that there's a few things that hurts Rio Rancho School District. So as much as we pay our taxes, it's going to Santa Fe, and they're saying where that money, how much money we get. And so that's something that I did not understand, and I think our community needs to understand. And so I think we should be upset about it, and we should be mad at it about it. And as I read those comments, there's a lot of not happy people. But we need to start directing that back to our legislators. And we need to really start being heard in Santa Fe. And we need to, as a district, try to figure out how to really, really get people to, we talk about it. And I think the district is doing, what we are doing is we are going back to that Yazzie Martinez court case, which is supposed to help us with transportation. And so now we really need our parents to step it up and start calling Santa Fe and figure out, and it's not just transportation, it's also with our materials for our classroom. And so I think those were some of the big things that I did not understand before getting on the board that I just wanted to put out there. I'm not sure I'm totally on with this policy being changed, but I do think it's important that our parents understand those things. So are there other comments from the board or things you guys want to discuss? Go ahead, Jessica.
The only thing I wanted to differentiate for the public is whatever happens with the policy, it does not include the changes for the proposed time allocations for the start times. And so that was, I feel like, kind of presented in the package with the policy change, with the proposed changes, and that would be separate from whatever happens with the policy.
Yeah, as a board, all we are voting on tonight are the walk distances. And so that is.
And then one other point of clarification is in the first initial communication that went out to the public, it did say that if approved, it is our hope that this change would be temporary until we see improvement in the bus driver. So yeah, it was.
Initial.
Thank you. I feel so good.
It is in there. It is. Well, and I think it's important too for our parents to understand, and we've been trying to cover it, but to say again and again and again, no student would be asked to walk across Unser. No student would be asked to walk across Southern. And if I'm saying that wrong, then we really need to talk. No student would be asked to walk across 528. I believe that we don't even have students walking across Broadmoor that I could see. And so there you go.
Yes, we still do follow
Yeah.
hazardous walking statutes. We always follow those. And in fact, there was a parent that called from the Joe Harris district, and she had some concerns. And we did a drive-by just because the roads aren't completed out there. And it goes by, as I said last time, it goes by the number of cars that go through there. It has to be more than 60 cars. And while the students are going, and because of the path into Joe Harris to where the parents go to drop off and pick up is on the same street they're on. And so we realized that, you know what, they are going to have more than 60 cars, and we had to adjust that a little bit. And so we do follow those state statutes.
And I have one final question, because the same thing for Vista Grande
Uh-huh.
Elementary, and that's one of the largest amount of students that would be affected, but both routes to the school would be either on Chayote or Enchanted Hills, and both of those are heavily traveled roads. Both would be more than 60. So what is the route that those students should take?
I would have to actually look at the routes to see what we have set up, because I don't remember them off the top of my head. But that's one that our router was looking at as well, to make sure that we're following those hazardous walking statutes. Because as we think about the number of cars that there are now, besides if there's more. And so once that parent talked to me about Joe Harris, we kind of had a little chat and said, we need to make sure, especially with those elementaries, because elementaries have a lot of parent traffic, no matter what district you're in. And so I said, just take a look at all those others to make sure that that path that those kiddos are going to have to take is okay with the hazardous walking statutes. And
So would that include High Resort and Broadmoor both? Because those are both heavily trafficked.
I would have to look at them for which school for.
So I did look
That
at,
would be for Eagle Ridge and for Rio Rancho. Both of those, I know, have more than 60 cars.
So what the statute says, and I have one copy I can give you guys. So the statute talks about whether there is regulated crossing or unregulated crossing, which I was talking last time is going to be a traffic signal with a crosswalk, things like that. So it's not just on the speed of the cars, it's on the number of cars, as well as are there any, what I call a controlled intersection. And so it talks about that in there. So there's a few things we look at. So at Broadmoor or some of those other streets, there are controlled intersections where they can cross. So we look at those things. Some of the streets are not, say like 21st that is going up to Joe Harris, that's just a regular side street. So there's no controlled intersections that makes it safe for them. If it is a controlled intersection, they have to have a 4-foot walk path. And so I can give this, I have one.
you can give it over to Noreen.
You can look it up in statute.
So with the Loma, Colorado, because I was really concerned with that one, I actually looked at it, what the district sent out. I put in some addresses of people that I knew who were over
Right,
there,
right.
and they are still being picked up by buses for Eagle Ridge for that area. So what, do you have the number in front of you, Jessica, for Eagle Ridge that it affects? Because I don't think, I was worried it was going to take that whole neighborhood in, but at least that is updated, right, with what would be current with this policy, what you sent out, where we could put our addresses in and see if we
Yes,
were,
like I said, we did adjust that one for Joe Harris.
No changes.
And as people
changes for
notify
Eagle
us of things, because we do the best we can to know what's out there. But as you know, as if there's construction in the area, especially Joe Harris, they still don't have those roads completed. And so we have to make sure. Before there was a lot of heavy equipment, there's not that, but they've got some other issues. And so we feel like we've done a really good job looking at those and making sure that we're checking the hazardous walking. But I like I said, especially for the elementaries, where I'm having the router recheck those and make sure we're in good shape.
And so
There's
just
a
for-
lot of rules.
Yeah, just for information, for Eagle Ridge, there would be 0 students affected. Lincoln Middle School would have 53 students affected, and Mountain View would have 91 students affected.
And there's some parents that I have spoken to that thought they had to walk, but they don't. And I think they were misreading the thing they look at. If you've looked at that, I can understand how they misread that, because it says you walk 0.17, but that's to the bus stop. Yeah. And so I've had a few parents that were upset that they had to walk, but when I looked it up for them, they just walked to the bus stop. And so I think that created a little confusion too, just because the way it's worded.
Dr. Cleveland, I think you have a couple notes there.
Just one other thought. I mean, I think one of the other things parents need to be aware of is there will be some parents now that will choose to transport their own children. And so, parents will need to take that into consideration in planning their time, and that we may see some additional traffic around those school sites. with the change in walk zones. So parents will just need to plan accordingly.
I'm just going to put a concern out there. I'm still concerned that with all of our changes, maybe it's a little too many changes. And in the end, my biggest concern, I just want to put this out for the board, is that if it doesn't help, that we're going to get a lot of comments if it doesn't help, when we do this, or if we do this. So
Guys,
Yeah.
I got all the confidence in you. Mike, you just redeemed yourself with me, man. Y'all well done.
That's
actually
Beth. That's Beth.
Or whoever it was, man. You helped Mike and lead it right.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
all right,
correct.
just make it happen is all I'm asking, man. Because I don't want to get all those.
You're going to get them.
messages and phone call. Okay? Thanks, guys. Let's vote on this thing.
Anyone else with questions or comments on anything?
Madam President, I'll make a motion that we accept policy, changes to policy 906 and transportation.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Gary Tripp and a second by Jeff Morgan. And can you take a roll call vote for us, Kim?
No.
Nope, try again.
Yeah,
Just speak. I think we can all hear you.
that's all right.
1, 2, aha. So we had that little suspenseful pause there. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
No.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
No.
and President Galbraith.
No.
Motion fails 3-2.
Okay.
Thank you. We
All right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, Lynn, I just want to say too, still, just echoing what Noreen said, how much respect we have for you, and please don't leave us. And I hope that this year goes so much better. I really, really, really do. There's just, I think that we have some concerns. Jessica, did you want to say something?
I think there might be additional language, though, that we might still want to get into that policy that was different, aside from the proposed walk zone changes. So I don't know if you want to bring that back in front of the board, just to keep that on your radar.
That was my question, whether this could be
Yeah.
repackaged away and brought back for consideration. And if the board's,
Please.
generally the board says no, we take no.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of conversation, and perhaps there are some areas where we could make some modifications. So, Board Member Tyler, I appreciate you asking that question, and we will go back to the drawing board and perhaps bring back a modified proposal.
Well, I see Gary has something. Go ahead, Gary.
If we're kind of looking at this, my suggestion would be, what would the budget look like if we gave bus drivers $3 or $4 more per hour?
So we've already
in
gone
order to-
up, I think, $4 since
Yeah.
or $5 since I've been on the board in 2.5 years.
No, my question is,
Yeah.
You're going to give me a heart attack.
no, just for clarification, my question
Yeah.
is, what if we did $3 or $4 more? Would it attract more bus drivers? If we're looking at things, and that's our biggest issue, the biggest issue is you give somebody a little bit more money and benefits, then maybe we don't have the problem. And maybe we have to cut somewhere else.
Yeah, so they have
We got to look, if we're looking at options, we
We're
need to
not
look
good
at
at cutting
options.
things, is what Mike's saying right now. In his mind.
When we were doing references on an employee that had a CDL already, we talked to a school district that, I want to tell you, it was in Michigan. I don't know. Their starting wage is $25 an hour. They're in the same boat we're in. They can't get anybody to come to work. Yeah.
And to add to that, only a few years ago, we were paying 13 and change an hour. And so here we are now paying just under 20, and we're really in the same boat. So, I agree with you that normally, under normal circumstances, when you increase the salary, you do attract more folks to that particular job. But during this pandemic, post-pandemic, or whatever we call it, things have changed. The rules have changed.
But by comparison, teachers were getting 2%, 0%, 1%, and we were in the same boat every year. And now we're giving teachers 75, 65, and 55, and the game has changed. So I'm just comparing bus drivers to I mean, because I think that's the issue. I think a lot of other issues are Band-Aids. I mean, and I know we don't have the budget. I know what the answer might be, but
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think
that certainly is a
that's the
good point.
issue.
I mean, if we were to go up to 26, 25, 26, maybe there would be an impact.
Well, and I looked at the averages, so I was looking at that. And the averages for in the United States, at least right now in my really amazing Google search, was 17. And so that was for the whole country. And I think we're still high even within the state. And so, I mean, I think we could attract maybe more people. I think that one of the big problems, which Dr. Cleveland's talked a little bit about, and I know we've had in that email, is we really need to look at what's happening on those buses and make sure people feel safe being on those buses, and parents need to step up.
And parents just need to be aware. Parents just need to be aware is that we're going to get a lot tougher next year on discipline. And having gone out and spoken with some of the drivers, what they mentioned to me was the number one reason that people leave student discipline on the bus. And so it isn't, we're going to have to ask for parents' help. And we really need parents to get on board and talk to their children about behaving on the bus. And we're going to follow through when students do not do that. And it's not just an issue, but that's a really important issue in terms of working conditions. It's a safety issue. And you have much more of a chance of having an accident when you have disruption on the bus. And I had a misfortune in my previous job to see a situation where a child was run over due to disruption on a bus. And so we are going to get a little firmer, but we'd really much prefer parents to step up and help us and talk to their children about how you act and behave on a bus. But we are going to tighten that up next year, and I think it's a factor. And yes, with the CDL and the big trucking companies and all of that, they do pay more. I would like to say, though, our working conditions are nice. If you don't want to have to drive across the country and be away from your family for days and sometimes weeks at a time. And there are some things we do offer to be able to work within your own community and with your friends and neighbors. And so we think we do offer a good district. Our benefits are quite good. We really hope that people will continue to consider driving a bus as something that they would like to do, because we really do need additional drivers. But my last comment is I do want to thank Lynn and also really thank HR for the really aggressive work in trying to get our slots filled this year. And we're in better shape by far this year than we were last. And that didn't just happen by accident. And I do think the increased compensation helped, in terms of getting more drivers. But I do know there are some districts now in New Mexico that are paying more than $20 an hour in order to get their routes filled. So it may be that at some point there has to be some adjustment. But that's hard to do when you're already 1.6 million in the hole. And you have to think about where that money comes from. And that money comes right out of your classrooms. It comes right out of your compensation. It comes out of other things the district needs. So what we really need is for the state to step up and fix this problem for us.
And we need parents to reach out to our legislators and make it very clear that we've got a problem here that we need to solve. And it's more than just dollars and cents, it's kids' safety.
One last thing. So Jessica, as you were talking about, them possibly rewriting this policy, what would be some things that you would want to see in the policy, just to put out there before?
Well, my main point was there's an additional paragraph covering the 3 and 4-year-old that wasn't in our previous policy that I think statutorily we need to have in that policy potentially.
And there's some other minor wording that needs to be amended.
So that was the main issue. I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose, but when I was reviewing the data, I almost hate to use this word, but I feel like the way it was distributed amongst how these proposed changes would affect the district across the board, that it wasn't equitable. So the fact that it only affected 50% of our schools versus each school or each neighborhood, maybe kind of pitching in a little bit. So to me, it almost came up as, is there potentially other resource allocation creativity that we can do. And I, like they've all said, I mean, you have probably the most difficult job in this whole district, Lynn. So we appreciate, I appreciate this proposal, because I know that you guys have probably tried to think of everything, but when it only affected 50% of the schools, I think that creates another issue for us as a district and as a board. And so if there's other ways that we can address it to still reduce routes, that would be, I guess, my advice.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, just to, put a final note on this. During the school year, Jana had some of the elementary schools write some really nice notes to our bus drivers. And so one of the notes essentially said this, one good thing about being a bus driver is that the problems are behind you.
I think we should pay for commercials with that slogan. I think.
I was kind of thinking of maybe a hiring slogan that become a bus driver, your problems are behind you.
That's funny. Thank you. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate all the work that you do for us. So our next item is a second reading for policy 622 student fees, and Carl Leppelman, our chief academic officer, Sherry Carver, executive director of student services, are here to present.
Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. This is the second reading, as mentioned earlier. And Sherry Carver and I are here actually to make sure we did make any changes you had from the last conversation. And I will mention the one thing that Dr. Cleveland did mention is, having dealt with fees over the last, feels like 15, 20 years, the district has done an incredible job given our budget, really removing fees and being aware that families, it's hard. It's hard right now with inflation. So I think we've done a really good job. Administration, the board has certainly supported over the last years getting any fees diminished. So we stand for questions.
Any questions? Gary Tripp on that same? Jeff Morgan? No? Any questions? No? Okay.
I move. This is Secretary Scott. I move approval of policy 622 student fees.
Board Member Tyler will second.
Okay. We have a motion by Noreen Scott, a second by Jessica Tyler. And will you take a roll call vote for us, Kim?
Yes, ma'am. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
And can you remind me who did all that?
Motion by Noreen Scott and a second by Jessica Tyler.
Thank you.
Which is why I was having a hard time getting names out, because I was writing it at the
Yeah,
same time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
You got off easy.
Oh, just-
it. We could keep talking if you want.
Note to self: go after transportation.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Next item will be our first reading to policy 710, reporting child abuse, neglect, and ethical misconduct. Mike Chavez, our executive director of human resources, is presenting.
I'm just going to come up here anyways. Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, and members of the board. Over the past year or so, in the legislative session of 2021, House Bill 128 was passed, and it did some significant changes to a number of our policies. It's having a significant change on some of our policies, but also on a lot of our procedures. And we've been working diligently over about the past year to implement a lot of this House bill. And we're at the point right now where we now need to put a lot of those changes into our policy in order to make sure that everyone is aware of what is expected of them. So policy 710. Yeah, why don't you talk about the details a little bit? Thank you. My name's Lauren Hatch. I'm the chief counsel.
for the district. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, we have 3 policies that are presented tonight for first reading. And if it's okay, I will just go through all 3 of them. And I think I have all the answers, but if not, I might have to call on David, our attorney over here, who did a lot of the drafting here. So if we start with policy 710, this policy has been in place for a long time, and it's a policy related to a long-standing criminal statute related to reporting child abuse. And the proposal that we're making here to change it is to clarify who within the district is required to make a report. One of the major changes that happens with House Bill 128 is that it includes not only employees, but contractors, employees, and also volunteers. And so what our intention here was is to really spell that out, because what the law requires is that all persons report. And before we had that represented as school employees. Well, it's really more than that. And so that's what the first changes are for the.
Sometimes it just cuts out. No.
We
No.
can hear you.
I think Tyler has another microphone.
I think it was afraid I was.
Oh, it's
too loud.
back.
There it is. It's back. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I don't think you can hear me.
I think it's okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. So that's what the first batch of changes are here on in 710, and then clarifying a long-standing practice within the district that after you make a report, you need to tell student services, they have a form, so that we're able to track it internally. And so that's what the changes are in A. And then B, House Bill 128 creates this new reporting regime for what they call ethical misconduct. And it says that if there's ethical misconduct, everybody has to report either to the superintendent or to PED. There's a definition that we added here that's right out of the statute. I can read that for you, or you can see what it says there. It's more than just, well, it has a lot to do with how you're treating other people, especially students. So that's added here. It clarifies that some ethical misconduct may actually be child abuse as well. So not only do you have to do the reporting of ethical misconduct, you also have to do the reporting to law enforcement or to PED if there's child abuse. And then it designates the Human Resources Department to track that information. So it really to comply with House Bill 128. Any questions on that?
Go ahead. Gary has a question.
Just a couple. I was looking at page 1 after C, and I think I was reading where it starts, so long as such report is made in good faith. I was wondering if the law about good faith, the Good Samaritan law, could be kind of added in support of that person that's making the claim that they're protected by law as a Good Samaritan. In other words, trying to promote that it's a good thing to report something's going on if you have a suspicion. So that was just a recommendation about maybe entering the statute that shows, hey, it's not only your responsibility, but it's a good thing and you'll be protected. And then on page 2D, I didn't know if under other prohibited behavior, if we should detail what that means, other prohibited behavior. I don't know if that would be in examples or if it's clarified by law. That part, I don't know, but I was just wondering if that's something that could be expanded a little bit more.
You want to make, that is to expand everything that could possibly be.
And it may be throughout the document. I'm just throwing it out there.
Madam President, Mr. Tripp, so as to your as to your first question, it is a good thing to do, and it's the right thing to do because we have an obligation to protect children. The language that's in the policy right now is taken from the way the statute reads.
Okay.
And the idea of it is that some people are afraid that if I see something going on, but if I report it, then I'm going to get in trouble or I'm going to be unnecessarily involved in it. The idea is that if you report, something you see, you're in good faith, meaning you actually believe that you saw something and you actually believe that there's something to report. Not, I'm turning in my neighbor because I hate them or whatever. That you're protected from being involved in a civil process or criminal process to do that. So that's the intention of it. We can go back and look to see if there's anything we can add in there that maybe goes in the direction that you're talking about. The second question you asked on page 2D, again, this language literally tracks the statute, and the legislature put that in as kind of a catch-all. And so we're not sure what that means yet.
Right.
And I get that it's often helpful to be more explicit and really explain to people who have to comply with this policy what that would mean. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't really know what that means. So
I have a third, but that's
Sure.
more of a comment based on what I thought might be the answer, which I think I just heard. And that was, and this goes kind of to our CTE situation where adults and children will be mingled, but it also goes for every building. And I was wondering if it's legal to put a lot of signage up in like adult areas, lounges, so forth of hey, we mean business here, that we will go after you to the nth degree of the law. And there's some pictures around the room about what we mean by other prohibited, like texting or social media. Get on there with a child and human resources is going after you or something like that. So that's kind of my suggestion. If we can add more to, we're going to, this is the most important policy to our hearts and probably every person in this room. And we're going to do anything we can to take care of our children type of thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I suspect, Madam President, Mr. Tripp, that probably in the next little while, we may be looking at maybe tweaking some of our policies that we have around texting, which is prohibited between employees and students. Whether we need to expand those definitions to make sure it's very clear that volunteers can't do that, contractors can't do that, not just employees. Because we're talking about people who are in the same nature of position, but maybe legally their status is slightly different. But the principle still is there, that you shouldn't be having private communications with students. And the same with social media as well. Any other questions with 710?
Thank you.
Is it okay if I move on to?
Yes, please do.
So the next one, 720, is actually a bit more straightforward. This is the qualifications for employees. One of the things that we added under the training requirements is that you get training in ethical misconduct. We've been doing all this other training up to this point. Really, we kind of cover ethical misconduct as it is,
Right.
but this is just to make it explicit because it's in the requirements of the statute. And that's the only change for 720. And then 728. It's okay if I move on to that one, Madam President.
Yeah, anyone have any questions on the other one? No. Oh,
No.
Nope. Okay, good.
Again, so there's really two groups of changes here. One is to conform with the requirements of House Bill 128 about the information that we are required to obtain from applicants. And in here, and to conform with the statute, an applicant is not merely somebody who's looking for employment. It's a contractor, it's a contractor's employee, it's a volunteer. If they meet the definitions, if they're going to have unsupervised conduct unsupervised contact with children. So the statute requires us to collect a lot more information. So we need information about who their employers have been, especially if they've been other schools. We need information from them answering the questions in 2A, B, and C about, have they been investigated? Have there been found violations of ethical misconduct? Have they ever had their license denied or suspended, or they had to surrender it? So we need that information from them. And then we get a written authorization from them that says, hey, you can go ahead and follow up on my answers and make sure that they're correct. And that we're not going to have liability. The other employers are not going to have liability. This is a process that was really tricky to put together, but we came up with a solution that works. And I think some other school districts have followed that example. Yeah. It's pretty efficient. But again, it is employees, it is contractors, employees, and volunteers. And then the last change, this isn't from House Bill 128 necessarily, but this just says that if you're an employee, you're a volunteer, you're a contractor, and you have some involvement with the police, you need to tell us about that. Are you a suspect in a crime? Are you under investigation? Have you been charged? Have they summoned you or arrested you for a crime? You need to let us know that. I think that's pretty common in employment that employers want to know that information. Mm-hmm. And that allows us, it doesn't necessarily affect somebody's employment, but we want to make sure that if something happens that could affect their employment, that we know about it in a timely manner. So any questions on those? Yes.
I think it would be helpful either to rename the policy potentially or add this incumbent employee language to an additional policy, because a lot of current employees won't look to this policy if they get in trouble and they're looking to see what is my duty to report. They're not going to look at a background policy to figure that out if they're actually worried about it. Or once they're already hired, they're not going to necessarily be as concerned with the background policy. So I think either adding language to the name of the policy or duplicating this language in a secondary policy would be helpful.
Madam President, Ms. Stiles, we'll check that out. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Well taken.
Thank you. Anything? Go ahead, Gary Tripp.
I think I have a question for Mike, if he doesn't mind. And I just don't know, since House Bill 128 came out, I've been out of the picture. But when they send back the forms to, how detailed are they about like school investigations? If a principal, I'm just trying to figure out that word investigation and how it's reported when we're trying to hire somebody.
According to the bill, they're required to let us know if there was an investigation regarding ethical misconduct regarding the applicant that we're inquiring about. So far, we've gotten about 800 responses since we started this process. Of those, we've actually only gotten one back that confirmed that there was an investigation, because what the bill says, it has to be an investigation of ethical misconduct that was confirmed to have been the allegations were founded. In other words, the allegations against the person were confirmed. If they were investigated for ethical misconduct, but the allegations were unfounded, then that doesn't go against the employee or the applicant. So it really depends on the district, and it's, the bill doesn't really have anything in there with anything that says this is what will happen if the district doesn't respond or anything like that. And it's very interesting, as Lauren says, we jumped on this right away. So there's two parts to the process. The employee has to answer these three questions. They have a form that they, on a criminal history affidavit, they have to answer the three questions. Then they have to fill out a form that goes to their former school district or charter school or private school. We actually require we go a little above the law. We make it go to a private school as well. So any school where they worked with children, we require that form to go. Once that form goes, it's really in the hands of that school to then fill out the form and return it to us. Now, like I said, we've been pretty pleased. We've gotten about 800 of those back, but how detailed they fill it out is really up to that other school district to decide.
Thank you. And thank you for going a little beyond anything we can do to take care of our children. So thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Anyone else? Questions? Dr. Cleveland, anything you want to add? Okay. Okay, that's it for those policies. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, moving into advanced planning. So we have this week, there's the NMSBA Leadership Retreat up in Taos. You should already be registered for that if you were planning to go. July 19th, Summer School Independence High School graduation ceremony will be at 5 p.m. Here in this boardroom. Yeah, 5:30, that's good to know, okay. 5:30. Is that a Tuesday, Claudia? Is that the day? I just don't have my phone, that's fine. Yes, okay. Then we have July 25th will be an audit committee meeting, 4:30 in the training room. July 25th also will be a regular board meeting at 5:30. August 4th will be, gosh, we're back to school already. August 4th, 6th and 9th grade will be their Jumpstart Day. The 5th will be the first day of classes for middle and high. 8th, first day of classes for elementary school. Also, August 8th, we'll have a finance committee meeting at 4:30 and a regular board meeting at 5:30. Audit committee will meet on August 22nd, along with another regular board meeting at 5:30 here. And with that, anything with the calendar? Okay, our meeting's adjourned for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jessica, 'cause,